right now. Listen up.
3, 2, 1.
It's showtime.
That's great.
This is ridiculous.
99.3 The Truth.
You can't handle the truth. Right now.
Ooh.
That was the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Let's do it.
Hit it.
It's time for Mac's World. And here we go.
Everybody here. Everybody here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
Call Mac 244-0077 or text 809-0993.
It's showtime, everybody. Showtime.
Exclusively on 99.3 The Truth.
7 minutes after 4 o'clock on the very first day of December in the Lord's year 2016. Can't believe it's December 1st. Where does time go? Where does time? You know, J.D. Hatfield used to say, you have all the time there is. Don't tell me you don't have time. You have all the time there is. And yet we're just about ready to put a stamp on 2016. Anyway, happy to have you here on the radio with us today. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Of course, the regular team is here. Let's start first with the most important person in the room, and that's you. Yeah, you, the listener. Oh, I know you're not in this room, but you're in my head, and I'm in your ears, and hopefully a little bit of me's in your heart. You enjoy listening, or you hate to listen, but you listen anyway. Those are Frank's fans.
I thought I was the most important to you.
Frank. Actually, the most important person in the room right now is my dog, Picasso.
Yeah.
Isn't he a good boy?
He is a good boy.
He's such a good boy. All right, Jebediah is producing. Bob Monster at the Cat in the Hat watching the chat, and the Service Legends Truth Talk text line at 809-0993. Chris Roloff is here. Our special guest is Chris John Beck, and, of course, the old man in the sea, Frank the Verse Thomas. Once again, in front of the microphone, ready to make you mad.
Yes.
Yeah?
So tonight the Cowboys are going to win. Just want to put that on the table.
Who are the Cowboys playing?
Some team from some Minnesota something.
Vikings?
Yeah, something.
Ooh, that could be a good game.
That's not important.
By the way, let's remember to let folks know that at 6 o'clock tonight is the Adoption is Cool.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing over at Grays Lake from Michael Damastis and Fort Des Moines Church of Christ. 6 o'clock by the beach, $25. You get to jump in. I guess you could do it naked. I don't know. But you get to jump in the
No, you can't
lake.
be naked publicly.
You can't do naked publicly?
No, they frown upon that, even in Des Moines.
You know, my neighbor will text me sometimes when I've got the lights on and the blinds up, and they'll say, you can't, it's yuck.
Yeah, you got to put the blinds down for that.
Oh, okay. Anyway, $25 raising money for a family who's looking for to adopt a domestic child, and that's going on tonight. So hopefully you'll remember to do that and stop by.
I'm just laughing. So we were having a conversation in the break with Chris John, our guest, about
Chris John Beck,
about why evangelical Christians have the dominant voice when it comes to the Christian voice in our media and our broader culture. And we're talking about broadcasting, and we were talking about some of that, and that you don't see a lot of mainline Protestants or Catholics. Now, I will say Catholics have their own radio network, but within Catholicism, the broadcast variety tend to be the conservative group, though. So, and maybe I'm wrong here, but typically on a Catholic radio station, yes, they're Catholic, but on social issues, they align with the James Dobsons and such. I mean, they tend to be very conservative on most issues. The current Pope of the Catholic Church is not very amongst American Catholics.
So the Pope worldwide is a pretty popular pope, and I haven't done a ton of digging into actual numbers here, so I don't want to misspeak. But the Pope, in many ways, has revitalized the Catholic Church. I think what's frustrating, though, from my perspective, is that the Pope is. My disagreements with the Pope aside, because I could go on a long rant about the Pope, but the Pope is one of the global voices who will still stand up from time to time and say something contrary to what's considered popular knowledge or popular wisdom within the evangelical community, and he will call them out on points of theological differences. Largely what happens is he gets called anti-Christian or anti-Christ, or people say he's not following the Bible, or there's this wide variety of attacks and insults that will get flung against the Pope when he says something contrary to the popular evangelical understanding of what Christianity is. And that is a huge part of my frustration, is that there's just huge voice. There's people from all over the country, locally and nationally syndicated, who can just go on tirades against the Pope. And it seems like there's this huge body of people who all disagree with the Pope. He must be wrong, whereas he's representing a much larger global opinion about what Christianity really is.
Give me a definition of the term, either one of you guys, of what you're describing as mainline.
So the mainline Protestants are going to be the sleepy congregations that you grew up with, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Baptists, Episcopalians,
right?
Yeah, just on and on.
The
and on.
Church of England in Europe would be in that same category by and large.
So would you describe them as evangelicals as proactive, and they're the opposite of proactive?
Kind of think of it like
non-active.
Think of it like this, Frank. I would say that, and this may be offensive, and so be it. A rhino, right? Republican in name only, or the main, or the establishment, the political establishment. That's the mainline Protestant church. And your evangelical Christian is going to be your Tea Party people, your moderately libertarian, conservative, that kind of group.
The mainline would be the quiet Christians, and the more vocal Christians would be the evangelicals.
I think so. And I think what Christian's getting to is that that's a source of irritation for him. He wants the quiet, at least 50%, or the quiet majority to be louder. Now, so... And I think that it comes back to, and I think we talked about this in the break, and I think it really comes back to incentive. I don't know that the mainline Protestant church, your mainline Episcopalian minister or professor at Duke University or something like that would have an incentive to engage in public discourse on the radio.
I think you're exactly right, and I think there's a certain amount of elitism that goes into it, too. I think for a long time, the Catholics and the mainline Protestants have had a view that they represent the more solid theological, historical, and academic opinion and perspective on Christianity and the Bible. And they've kind of looked down at the evangelicals as those crazy Looney Tunes who are yelling on the radio and on the TV all the time, and they have not engaged with them to kind of refute those. And as long as butts keep sitting down in pews, I think that's happy. I think they're happy to keep doing that. But a lot of their congregations are declining across the country. This is a problem in the mainline Protestant community. The congregations are declining, not in absolute numbers because of population growth, but in percentage of the population, and even in percentage of the Christian population. They have shrunk tremendously since the 1970s. So I think they're increasingly is an incentive there for them to engage, and they are not doing it because they're not, even if they're nonprofits, which they are, they still rely on people showing up in order to keep the doors open. And if the trends continue, they're in a lot of trouble.
Okay, you guys had a conversation off air that some of it could be talked about. It's the idea you were bantering back and forth, the idea that these evangelicals are self-funding, self-fulfilling, self-recyclating each other because they never die out if there's always a cause for urgency.
Recyclating is a great word.
It is a good word.
We need to write that down.
That isn't even a real word.
It's not. That's absolutely true. But it's one of the many words that Frank will use that I wish we could get a definition for.
But he hit the nail on the head, though, Frank.
Yes.
I mean, it's the sense of urgency, right? I mean, every evangelicals, that group of Christian, which Christian rightly says, I think we're all a part of in a sense, sees everything as being urgent.
Yes.
Right? So this election was the most important election that the Christians will ever vote in, ever in the history of ever.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you something from my perspective, okay? If we feel like your fate is sealed at your death, there's no chance to do a do-over, a reset button. You have this choice in this life to make a decision for the Lord or not. So some people want to wait till the 11th hour to make that decision. They want to get this done. They want to have these relations. They want to do these drugs. They want to do this. And then I'm going to get straight with the Lord. Well, sometimes people who wait till the 11th hour die at 10:30. So that's the urgency I feel as a Christian is I need to proselytize that person or engage that person before they die and their fate is sealed. So that's why there's it's always a new effort.
That's a different type of urgency, though, than I think the type that me and Chris were talking about. Because what you're talking about is the urgency of salvation. And what me and Chris are talking about, and stop me if I get tacky here, but the marketability of urgency. Okay, if you tell people, if you bludgeon people over the head week in, week out, day in, day out, every hour, that this is an emergency, we're under attack, Christianity in the United States is under attack, we're being threatened constantly, this election is dire, on and on and on. Here's the solution: pray, tune in here. Listen this day, support this local business. What you have is you're telling people there's a problem and you're offering them the solution to it. So it turns into a self-continuing cycle, and that's marketable. What Chris is pointing out, I think rightly so, is that there isn't a similar thing happening on the mainline Protestant or the Catholic tradition. And what it's led to is a particular version of Christianity, which I'm not saying is the right or the wrong one, but it's a particular subset of Christian ideals that are the dominant voice in American media. And I think, yeah.
No, just finish your thought.
So there was a great quote by a professor that I was listening to one time, who's an Anglican professor, and I think he hit the nail on the head when talking about this theology. And he said that the problem, his name is Philip Carey, and he said that the problem with modern-day evangelicalism is that it is a theological tradition that doesn't recognize that it's a theological tradition. It just asserts itself as the truth.
We're talking about labels and who's got the voice in the country of those of us who believe and follow Jesus Christ. Interesting conversation about the Pope. I want to add something to that if I can in a minute. I didn't want to stop you and Frank because it's hard to stop Frank. You got to pull on his tail and put cold water on him. Okay, we're coming back at 18 after the hour live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Gone away is the bluebird, here to stay is the new bird. He sings a love song as we go along, walking in a winter wonderland. In the meadow we can build a snowman and pretend that he is Parson Brown. He'll say, are you married? We'll say no, ma'am, but you can do the job while you're in town.
Oh, how cute. 21 minutes after 4 o'clock on the very first day of December in the Lord's year 2016. J. Michael McCoy, Thursday afternoon. Want to congratulate my friend Clutch. Been off the radio for about a year here in town, and he's starting a new radio gig Monday, I think it is, on the Alternative 106.3. Not my kind of music, but he's my kind of guy. So
that's rock and roll station, yeah.
Yeah, rock and roll. Yeah.
Did I sound like an old fogey? That's what those.
Isn't that kind of your music though? You like that station, right?
Lyle Lovett.
Yeah, just not. Nobody plays Lyle Lovett in Iowa, so that's what I would like to listen to.
Bob and I were talking a little bit ago. You know, we are 20 days away from leaving for Jerusalem, and we're going to be broadcasting live from Jerusalem Christmas week, and specifically on Christmas Eve. And Jill, my integrator, Jill King, thought probably I needed a life insurance policy just on the trip. You know, the airlines will sell you a trip, or it's like $38 for $1 million or whatever it is. And so she asked me who to make the beneficiary out to, and I said, just make it you. Just you and Randy. Seriously, you know, they're wonderful people. I love them. I don't do enough for them. And I said, just make it you and Randy. And Bob, coming out of the bathroom or just in the hallway, says to me this. Tell him what you said.
Well, I just said that Joe probably won't be praying for your protection.
So I lost one of my best prayer warriors because she could get $1 million. Anyway, but Bob and I have talked about running away from home. We really have. I mean, I'm serious. We've talked about just disappearing. I mean, you'd never find us. And he looks like an Arab. Look at him.
Yeah, now Bob would fit in. You would not so much so.
Well, couldn't I be like Howdy Doody? I mean, couldn't I purposely be this way? I mean, the white hair. I mean, I've got a Jewish look, don't I? Kind of, with the white long beard and everything.
You wore a black hat.
I was going to say, if you get the black Hasidic,
the
sort of the black Hasidic hat,
yeah,
you can pull it off.
Then I could. Okay,
I think so.
I got to decide how much of this face I'm going to take off before I go. I don't know if you know that. I don't. Right now, my hair is long and my beard is not. Nothing's been trimmed since October 1st because I play Santa Claus for a couple of not-for-profits, and so I'm growing it all out. And the other day, I was in Kohl's and I turned a corner real quick, and there was a mirror there, and I saw myself in the mirror and scared the heck out of me. Oh my gosh, this is not a look I like, but that's, you know. Like people have said for years, he's got a face for radio.
Just go back to your 70s hippie days when you was running around in a 71 Mach 1.
Yeah? I always had a butch back then, though.
No, you had long hair and a beard.
No, I didn't have... In 71?
Well, when did you have long hair and a beard? When you was buying and selling radio stations?
Yeah, 94.
Okay.
That's when I had my long hair. 94 to 98. All right, anyway, that's not what we want to talk about today. Uh-oh. Jill just said, ha, 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 I thought the same thing. Actually, it's medical insurance, so it's not life insurance. I thought it was medical insurance. All right. Chris John Beck is our guest today, and we're kind of talking about the labels that America puts on themselves, and as well as other people. And one of those labels from your perspective, and I'm not sure I fully agree with you, that the only voice, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but what I hear you saying is the only voice for faith and values is either the Pope or an evangelical. And there's no Methodists, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Baptists. There's nobody else out there that has a voice in politics or in the culture. And I think we all agreed that Franklin.
Billy.
No, he's not.
Franklin Graham.
Franklin Graham has kind of stepped up in that. But there really is anybody else. Now, you said Rick Warren, and I would agree with you. I wish he was more of Matt Chandler, but he's just not out there like that.
Well, James Dobson still speaks a lot,
But Dobson's old.
Yeah,
I mean, I like him, but he's...
Sure.
Have you listened to him on his radio show?
He's still
failing.
Involved. He's still involved.
Okay, well, I don't mean to say anything. I hope I'm still batting like that when I'm however old he is.
It's true. But I think to Christian's point, though, think about... do we say vice president-elect? Is that
Yep. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of words. Mike Pence, speaking of James Dobson, was recently on James Dobson's program, actually, and he identified himself as a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican, and in that order. And that's kind of what you're getting at, right? I mean, when people hear in the political world, when they hear the word Christian, they assume those next two things follow.
Yes.
Christian, conservative, and Republican follow. You would be surprised to hear, I'm a Christian, I'm a liberal, and I'm a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
That just sounds goofy.
It does.
I'm a Christian, I'm a liberal, and I'm a Democrat.
Right.
But that's most Catholics.
Well,
I don't think maybe I'm wrong here. I don't want to offend anybody, but I think more than half of the Catholics are liberal and democratic.
So this is the interesting thing when we start talking about this, though. The Catholics are kind of quirky in that they're much more. Oh, I don't want to say that. The Catholics go based on.
What weren't you going to say?
Well, let's not talk about it. The Catholics go much more based on individual metrics. So they are very, very liberal. Not very liberal. They're liberal when it comes to things like economic issues, how to deal with the poor, social safety net programs, and they tend to more conservative when it comes to things like contraception or abortion. So they're fence riders. But even your denomination, the ELCA, Hope is ELCA, I believe, Evangelical Lutheran Churches in America.
Yeah, but I'm just Lutheran.
Okay, so the Lutherans,
because I spend as much time at a Missouri Synod church as I do in ELCA, so I'm just Lutheran.
So ELCA is majority liberal.
Oh, yeah.
ELCA is majority liberal. PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church, is majority liberal. Anglicans, Baptists, a little bit, depending on what type it is that you're talking about. But this is the problem, is that on some of these individual issues, we're not getting a variety of voices. So when you think of these days, if you're talking about gay marriage, if you're talking about the political issue of whether or not to allow gay marriage, which is, I mean, the Supreme Court has decided now. But if we're going to look at
no, don't say that. That's a liberal narrative. But go ahead.
Well, the Supreme Court has ruled on it.
What did they rule?
They ruled that you couldn't prevent gay people from marrying based on
So that
Constitution.
doesn't mean they approved gay marriage. It means
right.
Okay.
Well,
no,
it means that they're allowing gay marriage to go forward in the United States. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So if you're talking about that issue, if you're talking about that, and somebody says, "What is the Christian perspective on that issue?" Everybody in the listening audience, whether you are liberal, Christian, liberal, conservative, Christian, atheist, everybody knows that what you're going to think, if somebody says, what is the Christian perspective on that, will be that they are against it, based on what we hear of the Christian political voice in the political discourse of the day. And it doesn't align with the denominational view of that issue.
Now, Pat Buchanan is a good Christian boy, and he asserts in his book that these churches, like you're talking about, are losing population. They're not growing. Even he suggests the Catholic Church isn't growing at the rate they used to. But he attributes, in a book in about 2013, I believe, that the Episcopalian Church has lost 1 million members since the year 2000. And he directly attributes it to gay and lesbian ordained priests and gay marriage in the Episcopalian Church. Now, where are these members going? Are they joining other churches? Are they becoming non-denominational?
Yes, it's the short answer. They're going all over the place. People tend to people tend to take their beliefs and seek out a church that represents those beliefs rather than researching the theological background of a church and deciding based on that theological background what they should believe. It doesn't go that way. It goes the other way. People look for a church that preaches what they already believe rather than finding a church that they believe is preaching the right thing and adjusting their beliefs.
Okay, so what I would suggest is those mainline churches are purging out the rhinos in some respect, like the Republicans seem to be wanting to do to certain liberal Republicans. In essence, these people are being purged out or spewed out on their own voluntarily or by the doctrines the churches are accepting. They're pushing these more evangelical Christians out.
That very well may be. That very well may be. But that's the conversation that I want to hear. That's the conversation that I want to hear is why is that happening? And is that right?
I've got a great answer. And I don't know. We actually, Chris, John, you and I talked about Ryan, who called in a few days ago, who is another atheist who is a listener and participator in our broadcast.
Good guy.
And if he's listening, Ryan, call in if I get this wrong, but I believe when he called in a few days ago, he talked about the church that he grew up in became progressively liberal, more liberal, moved in that direction, and their numbers dwindled and less people. And he had acknowledged he liked the direction the church was going, but it's interesting that he now no longer follows that faith. And I think there is a correlation there. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, is the Bible. If the Bible itself stops being authoritative, then what are you believing in? And if you're believing in something that is simply a felt thing, an emotional thing, a personal preference, then there's a lot better things to do on a Sunday morning than go to a church building.
So this is a really interesting point. Because I agree with you. The disconnect comes when I talk to evangelicals versus talking to Catholics.
Right.
Say, let's just use that as an example, okay? The evangelicals across the board rely more on emotion, and the Catholics are going to talk a lot more about doctrine and theology. I mean, that is, of course, there's going to be somebody's going to call in with one example where it's not true, and I'm going to look stupid. I'm used to that. Whatever the case, across the board, evangelicals are the ones appealing to emotion, and the really interesting, in-depth theological stuff is boring. It's incredibly boring, but. I mean, churches have to figure out something to do here. What's driven the rise of the evangelical church is they have a very consumer-based brand to their worship.
I would say I would use a different word. Now, we did talk about the consumer aspect in terms of broadcast media and things like that. But I think the scriptures themselves, the Bible itself, has an application component. You know, one of the things I like theology as much as probably the next guy. I enjoy theology. But the Bible itself is actually far more concerned with real life application than it is with theological dissertations on the character and nature of God. The Bible asserts that God is. The Bible asserts specific things about God. And then the Bible also asserts that God's people would behave in a particular way. And that's what we have in the scriptures. Theologians and intellectuals like to look at the Bible, pick it apart, and sort of play with it. But the Bible itself is very applicable, if that's the right word. There's a lot of application, and evangelicals grab the Bible and they want to make application to your life today rather than having a conversation about something theological.
515-244-0077. We've got a phone call.
Or something.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, I couldn't get it out. It's like the gender of God or something. Like we would debate the gender of God as a theological thing. The Bible could care less.
Yeah, I was going to say, who cares?
But some people do.
Who? Who cares? Who cares? We were created in His image.
Male and female, brother.
Male and female together.
Really complicated, I know.
Yeah. So, all right. Kelly's on the phone. We'll take his call when we get back here in just a minute. And it's your voice we want to hear, too, at 515-244-0077. Chris John back in the studio this afternoon with us here at Max World on The Truth 99.3.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
These are the Celtic Women. That's the name of their group. They are from down under, or not down under. They're from Ireland, and I've always been a fan of theirs. I mean, they're good singers, but I think one of my favorite things is their Christmas album, and you can find it on YouTube, obviously. But good group, good harmony, good stuff. Celtic Women. All right, 20 minutes, basically 20 minutes before the top of the hour. At the top of the hour, we're going to have Salem Radio Network News and then Hank the Bible Answer Man at 1-888 Ask Hank. Today, our special guest is Chris John Beck, and Chris John is just a friend of the shows, and we should have him on more often. Frank, you guys have kind of become Fast and Furious Facebook fans, haven't you?
Well, we before he got involved in the political campaign and left me for dead. Best friend in the whole world. We used to talk at least once a week for a couple hours.
Oh, my heavens. You're like a couple of schoolgirls on the phone.
Well, he says we have this twisted love affair, so you can...
He talked about eloping to Israel, but apparently you and Bob have taken
Bob
that
and I
out.
are going to do that. So. Bob, 20 days until Max World Live goes to Israel to broadcast live from Bethlehem on Christmas Eve. Yes, I'm serious. I don't even believe my own self when I say that. How cool, right? Oh, man. Anyway.
I will say that I am genuinely getting more excited than I was. When you first announced that idea to me, I was kind of like, all I thought was the headache of getting it done.
Yeah, you thought of the work.
I did. Well, yeah, I don't like to do work. And so that's already been well established, hasn't it?
Mr. Carbone, I hope you're listening to this podcast.
I mean, what I'm actually doing right now while you're talking is I'm always working.
Absolutely.
Now I've got completely rabbit trail.
Well, you got excited.
But now I'm excited. I genuinely am really excited. I'm starting to, like you said, it's starting to become real, and I'm starting to visualize the broadcast. I'm really looking forward to hearing it. Just your voice alone being excited and all the cool things you're going to experience over there is going to be fun. So.
Yeah, I'm and everybody has told me the same thing. Anybody who's, every time somebody hears I'm going to Israel, anybody who's ever been there says the very same thing. It's going to change your life.
I believe it would. Because, for Christians, we talked about this earlier. You read things in the Bible and there's places and all this kind of stuff, but it all seems almost fairy tale-like until you're standing there and going, oh, it's real.
Wow. Yeah.
Like that's just far out.
We're having conversations about labels, not only in the Christian or the Christian world, among denominations and different platitudes, but also within the realm of politics. And we've been talking about that for a couple hours, and I want to introduce one of my best friends. Kelly Lindberg is on the phone, and Kelly's a sharp guy. So, Kelly, what do you got to say today?
Hey, guys, how you doing? Hey, I was just picked up the show about 20 minutes ago, so forgive me if this has already been addressed, but you're talking about who has the voice, right, for let's say Christians in America.
Yeah.
Would that be a safe statement?
Yeah, because I mean, for my generation growing up, it was Oral Roberts. It was the guy who cried because he had an affair with his secretary, Jimmy Swaggart,
Jim Baker,
Jim Baker's the Crystal Tree or the Crystal Cathedral, and now we really don't have anybody.
Well, you and Frank are old guys, so those probably before my time. Guys like Chris and I and Chris John are probably a little younger, so we probably aren't familiar. Anyway, I digress.
Falwell and Pat Robertson's probably your guys'.
There you go. My question would be, when you say that, the label according to who? Because I think, and the reason I think that's important is, when guys like, I've sat in enough groups and radio shows and meetings with guys like you and Frank and Chris to know that when we start talking about conversations, it's not uncommon for someone to say, oh, well, that guy's a Baptist, and so they kind of align to this type of theology or whatever. We're, I guess you could say, theological nerds in a sense, and I'm okay with that. But if you're talking about who has the voice to, like, overall, I don't think that people in general draw the parallels that sometimes that we do as Christians. We say, oh, that guy's out of the Reformed camp, or that guy's out of an ELCA camp, or that guy's, whatever. I think the term Christian, to people who especially are non-Christians or don't consider themselves to be Christians, it's just a blanket label. I mean, look at how many times you see, we're just all religious people and we're all lumped together. So if you're going to talk about who bears the label, I think it would almost be a conversation of who's the target audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, in a lot of respects, I agree with you. I think part of my concern is that when you do say these days, if non-Christians, let's use your example, if non-Christians are talking about the Christian perspective on things, they're not diving down into the weeds. They're not getting down into the minutia of Baptists, Anabaptists, Reformed, Calvinists, Lutherans. They're not diving down into the intricacies of that. I mean, you don't generally, unless there's weirdos like me out there, there aren't atheists in rooms sitting around talking about transubstantiation versus non-transubstantiation. That just doesn't happen.
Right.
But the assumption is that
you totally just lost Mac, by the way.
The assumption is that the Christian perspective is the conservative evangelical perspective. And I think you're right that that's probably not fair, but that's part of what I'm saying is that that's doing a disservice to the vast array, the diversity of perspectives, the diversity of opinion that actually is the Christian world, even in the United States here.
Right. And so I think that's a good point because, Christian, I don't know you personally, but I've heard you on the radio and I've seen, you following on Mac on Facebook. So I feel like I kind of know who you are and kind of know where your outlook on things. So if I speak something that is not a fair representation of you, please correct me.
Yeah, of course.
But so if you would consider yourself a non-Christian, a non-believer, non-Christian.
He considers himself an atheist.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's use that term. So you're an atheist, but I can tell you from my experience, I have sat across the table and had a lot of conversations with people who with people who are atheists, and they are way different in their views and the way they communicate than you are. I mean, you strike me as a guy who's able to sit down across the table and say, hey, look, I don't agree with you, but let's talk about this, and let's disagree, but let's do it respectfully and, treat each other like decent human beings. And that, that same formula could be, there's plenty of Christians out there that fit that label too, that if you don't believe what they believe, then you're just not really a true Christian. So I guess that's kind of why I brought it up. I think it really matters who your target audience is, because I will tell you, there's times people that I know, my story short, 6-7 years ago, my life got radically changed. And there's people who know me.
Big time.
People who know me from 10 years ago, and they're like, oh, he's a Christian now. And then I run into them on the street, and they'll be like, well, you changed. Your demeanor's different. You don't have that anger and that hostility that you used to have. But you're not what I thought you would be like when you're a Christian. When I thought, oh, I heard he's a Christian. I'm still doing several of the same things that I used to do. The things that were healthy for me, obviously, the things that were unhealthy, I've tried to eliminate. But so, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if it's relevant. I just, was listening and thought I'd call it and give my 2 cents.
Well, I've always tried to get you to come on the radio more often than you do. He used to come in studio more often, but with Frank here, he just doesn't. He thinks he's going to punch Frank in the throat.
That is not true. That is not true.
In the face?
Frank and I, you know what? It's funny because over the last year, listening more and more, sometimes I go, I think Frank's right on that.
Yeah, there you go.
Careful.
And that's a hard, brother, that's a bitter pill for me because only because the first time I ever had a conversation with Frank, he called in and he started referring to me as Calvinist Kelly, and we got it.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
I remember that little verbal jousting, and you looked at me during the break and you were like, dude, you got to settle down.
Yeah.
But no, I think Frank brings a lot to the table. I enjoy it. My work schedule's crazy, and plus, Mac, you've sat in enough Bible studies to know with me that if I get on the radio with you, you're probably not going to get a word in.
Oh, gee, it's just like old time. All right, Kelly, thanks for calling in. We're coming back last segment here. I want to pick up that conversation where we left off before.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common, everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows when you've been bad or good, so be good
For goodness sake. 10 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News. And then Hank the Bible Answer Man, 1-888-ASK Hank.
Was that song about the boogeyman?
Santa Claus.
Oh, he sounds scary.
So some of you may know I play Santa every year. I don't do it for money. I don't do it in public places. I usually do it for families or West Des Moines Human Services, stuff like that, just the little kids. And years and years ago, when I started playing Santa, I would wear a fake beard, the cotton beard. And every time that would happen, some kid, 8-year-old kid or whatever, would sit on my lap and then he'd grab my face or he'd grab my beard and pull it off. He didn't mean to pull it off. He was trying to figure out whether it was real or not. So the last few years, I've started in 1st of October and grown out my hair and my beard. So if you were to see me now, especially because I have Santa glasses, I have the little frameless glasses, So I'm in Hobby Lobby the other day. Did I tell you this story? I'm in Hobby Lobby the other day. And there's a little girl, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, right? I come around the corner and she looks at me and she goes, oh, Mom, it's Santa Claus. And I play the part. Yeah, how are you? Have you been good? Yeah, Mom says something about being good or whatever. And I said, well, okay. I said, I'll see you Christmas Eve. I said, I'll be at your house. Okay, that's great, Santa. 5, 6, 7 minutes go by, and all of a sudden this little girl comes around the corner with her dad and says, see, Dad, I showed you Santa Claus is in Hobby Lobby. So it was just, yeah, maybe you had to be there, but it was awful cute.
No, that is cute.
All right, we just got a few more minutes, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to kind of wrap up some of the points that you've been trying to make.
Yeah, so I wanted to get back to what Chris and I were talking about earlier when he was talking about how evangelicals are more interested a lot of the times in the application of the Bible rather than these kind of long, drawn-out, long-winded conversations about theology and dissertations about the nature of Christ and all these things. And I think that goes to the quote that I prematurely threw out earlier as we were going to break about half an hour or so ago, which is the quote from Professor Philip Carey, who said that the problem with modern-day Protestantism, and I'm using it here to talk about evangelicalism, is that it is a theological tradition that does not recognize itself to be a theological tradition. Because when we're talking about these things, when we're talking about how the Bible doesn't actually speak to some of this stuff, it doesn't lend itself to long, drawn-out conversations about the nature of Christ or something like that. My argument would be that is exactly what it does, because that's exactly how it's been used over the years. And one of the common things that I talk about with people when I bring this up is I ask people, especially when evangelicals want to get confrontational with me, which isn't that often, but it occasionally happens, and I try and de-escalate it a little bit. One of my questions is always, what do you think happened first? The Nicene Council, the council that decided what official church doctrine was going to be moving forward, or the finalizing of the New Testament? Which of those happened first? And always they think that it's the finalizing of the Bible, the finalizing of the New Testament, because how else do you infer what should and shouldn't be doctrine if you don't have the Bible in front of you, when in fact it's the exact opposite? Nicene Council was 325, and Athanasius, who was one of the bishops of Alexandria, was the first to finalize the New Testament as we know it today in 377, I want to say. And so, and this is what kind of opens the door to that conversation. These are, whether or not we want to call them in-depth theological conversations or not, they are. And when people want to say, well, just read the Bible, just see what the Bible says, it's obvious, just read it and apply it to today's life. What that denies is the fact that the way that they're going about that is itself part of a long theological tradition, going back to whoever, Luther, Augustine, Origen, any of these people that you can throw out. And when we don't bring that into the picture, when we don't talk about that, it does a disservice to the conversation, because you can't just pick up a Bible and read it and say, oh, now I totally understand the origin of the universe, the nature of God, the life and message of Jesus Christ, and what I'm supposed to do moving forward. It's just not that easy. It requires us to talk about how we've gotten to where we are today. And part of that conversation is bringing in the voices that still disagree today about what the nature of these things are.
Real quick, before Frank jumps in there, I just want to say that's why we're seeing a rise in Reformation stuff. The trendiness of the reformers, the trendiness of John Calvin and Luther, sort of in the broader culture. Yeah. The 18 to 35-year-olds are enamored with the historical Christian faith. And so we see a lot of young people flocking to, as Max talked about, traditional style services that recognize the historicity of our faith, that our faith didn't just appear one day when somebody stumbled across this book in downtown Des Moines. That there's that's happened. I think people are recognizing that. The days in the late 80s, early 90s, which was really when evangelicalism, the moral majority, the real rise of a lot of that stuff happened, they moved away from that tradition, and we're seeing a return to that in fairly short order. So, anyway,
but if we have faith that God is sovereign, everybody can't go back and know original Greek, original Latin, original Hebrew, go back to the Nicene Council, go back to the Council of Trent, the Council of this, Council of that. We've got to pick up a book and assume there's enough knowledge in that book that's been translated into what we read, if God is sovereign, that we can read that book and be saved.
Maybe. But I think what you have is a lot of people doing that and a lot of people coming to drastically different conclusions. And all of them could probably defend it. It's a big book. And if you take context out of the picture, you can make it say whatever you want. And I think what I'm wanting from the dialogue about Christianity in the country, whether it's marketable or not, which is a different conversation and an incredibly interesting one, is for that diversity of opinion to be present, so that people don't just think if you're a Christian, this is your eternal life on the line. And if you're only getting one version of this and it's wrong, then we're in a lot of trouble. Now, of course, you could say, well, it's not wrong because that's what the Bible says. But there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with that.
All right, Chris John, I appreciate you coming on. You're always welcome here in Mac's World. You raise the bar, and we actually have intelligent conversations. That's why you noticed I didn't talk a lot today. Thank you for being here, Mr. Roloff. Tomorrow is swim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, we're going to...
we're going to, I think, make a pretty big challenge tomorrow for people. There's a lot of people who have expressed interest in learning more about safe water and supporting it, and we're going to put out a challenge tomorrow.
Yeah, and those are the folks that are kind of helping to sponsor this trip that we're going on here. So thank you to them. That'll be tomorrow. Frank, thanks for being here. Bob, thanks for being here. Jebediah, as always, you're the best. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thank you for listening. I love this job. I really love this job. And I couldn't do it without you. Who you got in the head, living rent-free? You can't forgive them. You just can't do it. You're just not like Jesus enough yet. You can't. What? Yeah, you can. Forgive them. Because remember, as you forgive, that's the way God will forgive you. I'll see you at church.